It's live now.
Okay, so I guess we're going to start. So today is the inaugural kind of edition of the GovLab demo program, which is not the final name for it yet. But the demo program is meant to be a kind of series of online talks about various kinds of projects that are really about building technologies for solving problems in governance. And what we really are hoping is to make this about really the people who are really the process of building the actual technologies and creating prototypes of those technologies, and how the developers of the technology can kind of validate the prototype against the actual problem that they were setting out to solve. So how do they know that what they're building works is really the critical question here. And we're going to start with Alan Garcia, who is the developer behind Agreeable, which is a kind of open survey platform. You could call it semantic polarity kind of analysis. What it really does is it's a survey tool where you can ask people a question and they can give their opinion along the Likert scale. So they can say, I agree with this, I'm neutral about this, or I disagree with this. And then they can kind of submit a second opinion about the issue. So let's say it's something about gun control. The position might be, or the statement might be, we shouldn't have guns in schools. And then you might agree or disagree with that, but then you might have a kind of supplementary or side or another opinion that you want to throw out. And people can then agree or disagree with that other opinion. And what that ends up creating is a polarity graph, where you can see, given one issue, kind of where do people fall on the sides of that issue? Where is consensus around the kind of sub-opinions that a main issue might generate? And that's been really interesting for us at the GovLab, because we think a lot about how we can use kind of data and evidence to actually support claims about consensus and to actually be to inform policy development. And a huge part of policy development, of course, is consensus and whether or not people agree on policies. And so, at least at GovLab, I work on the ICANN project, which I don't know how much people know about, but really we ended up looking for ICANN. We were looking at ICANN's policy development process, and ICANN is a very open kind of participatory institution, but of course they deal with a lot of problems, and it becomes difficult to know kind of who thinks what and why. And so we recommended Agreeable, because we thought with Agreeable you can actually kind of see what kind of people think what kinds of things given what kinds of issues. And with that, I will turn over to Alan.
All right, hello, thanks, Anthony. Awesome introduction and great explanation of Agreeable. I'm really excited about this being the kind of inaugural launch of the demo program, and I'm also kind of proud to offer insight into what the process has been like building this thing out from concept, from kind of funny conversations with friends to something that lives and breathes, to a platform that users are active on, and that actually generates actionable data. So before it was programmed, and in fact before the algorithm had kind of gone through any construction-related considerations, a friend of mine had recommended that I test the concept using play cards. So this is getting into the question of how do you validate your concept with a framework that'll assist in actually proving out whether or not it functions, whether or not it achieves the goal that you set out. And that was a clever idea. It was an awesome idea, and it helped us to whittle down the concept to the point where the decision making and the change management was just a matter of changing what I scribbled on an index card. So Anthony, your explanation was awesome. I think part of what Agreeable really looked to target was the notion of polarity. I think often when we think of polarity, we think of it in terms of a cluster of people who have either voted yay or nay on a given question or issue and have hit this kind of polarized paradigm of 50-50 where there's no room for budging, there's gridlock. And that was the initial issue that we looked to kind of dive into. The question wasn't so much, can we change these people's minds or can we influence them at all, but rather can we get a finer resolution into the kind of modeling of that polarity, a finer resolution than the unit of yay or nay or binary. The question was now, can we kind of dive into the semantic layer, and is there any way that we can organize that information so that it actually is telling to us, that we can kind of quantify the qualitative? Until this and a few other frameworks, Twitter and Facebook and other social platforms were helpful. Comment threads were very helpful for just kind of getting a general temperature in the room, but not necessarily structured in such a way so as to support open conversation or so as to tell us anything about the rest of the population's perception on a given opinion. And so when Anthony laid out that we allow respondents of this study to go back and agree or disagree with one another's opinions, that became kind of the twist. That was what fell out of the index card game that we ran with. I think one thing that's very important when you're diving into building out a platform or building out a concept from the ground up is to trust and to feel confident in your decision, and to make sure that when you set out to build a platform, that you kind of build in a loop process to the end of your creative cycle that says, and tomorrow morning I will wake up and do the following 3 things, and it'll be because this platform is going to get built, and to be your own validator. This is less pragmatic, but just it's a very important part of it, to be your own engine and to be your own fuel for driving the product forward, because a good amount of what you'll find is you're going to get feedback and you're going to get insight from all the partners and people that you end up working with and that you end up pulling into the process. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to be the individual to continue to push it forward and to make the build happen. So that's kind of speaking to validation, both from a standpoint of how do you validate and prove the framework that you're working with, but also the other sense of validation in terms of you will have to be your own validator for a good amount of your struggle to build out this platform. But it's worth it. Some other questions that we wanted to talk to were around, is the platform for-profit or not-for-profit? It was one of the notes Anthony had brought up for kind of the framework of this. Agreeable is a dual model. So the notion is that while we operate a front-end beta that is free and is accessible by the public, and we also operate a local township and education model that is also free, we run a back-end that is kind of research-driven for brands, for brand sentiment, for political polling, and that is funded, and that is not free. So this dual model allows us to continue to fund our front end, our kind of open source or open platform through a separate offering that is for profit. Now I can't hear. I don't know if there are any questions so far. I'm happy to answer questions as we go along, but
None so far, Alan.
All right, great. Take this book here. So we kind of want to talk to the question of how it could be used for governance, and then we'll get into the actual design and build history of Agreeable. When we were recommended to the ICANN for governance, the first question was, does it make sense for this framework to be part of an actual decision support mechanism? Should it be used for decision support, or should it be used for maybe a more qualitative end in terms of discovery and identifying new evidence? And I think the decision was made to put it over to embracing evidence, to the notion of let's treat this as an expansive project that is not designed to hone in and say this is a particular pinpoint decision that's calculated through software. That's fundamentally a human process and a human decision. The question was now, or the idea was now to take it and say, okay, let's use this as a mechanism to discover new information and new insights about the questions we're asking that we wouldn't have thought of had we not gone through this process. So for governance, where we see it fitting in, and I'm using governance not just in the sense of government, but governance in terms of inter-organizational governance, corporate governance, or systems of people that require decisions to be made across them and consensus to be driven amongst themselves. And so to that end, Agreeable fits in the sense that you will identify sentiment that you may not have identified before, and it'll be done in a way that that minimizes bias and that offers kind of a methodical framework for thinking about what opinions drive consensus, what opinions drive polarity amongst your populations, and what can you learn from those particular sets of statements. So that's kind of it from a governance standpoint, right? The next piece is on the actual story of building it. Once we were finished with the cards, with the index card game, and that was a room full of. I had 6 friends initially. It turned into a room full of 15 friends, and what we ended up doing was just playing the game of Agreeable using index cards. So I would ask a question, and everybody would respond with yay or nay. I'd collect the cards, and then I'd ask them all to offer their opinion, collect those cards, number them, and then read them out loud to everyone else in the room and get a tally on agrees versus disagrees from those individuals. And that process over time helped me save on iterations in programming, so that I didn't have to worry about, hey, I just built this prototype, I just spent 40 hours of my time coding it, and here it is, I'd like you to test it to find that something was wrong. So that was a huge time saver, and I recommend it to anybody going into concepting a platform. Test it if you can, if it lends itself to it with index cards. Test it if you can, with existing systems, with the least expensive systems you can find. Just put together a prototype, a minimum viable product, a low fidelity minimum viable product, made up of just whatever you can rustle together. Just prove the concept, prove the flow of information. And once you've done that and you've learned lessons from it, you can identify for your framework what requires development and what doesn't. And that's where we were able to move in with the decision making for platforming on Agreeable. Agreeable is built on Django, sitting on Amazon Web Services. It's a Python stack. So these are technical notes in terms of what languages were used, in terms of what technologies we used. Amazon Web Services was a huge help for us in terms of being able to start small and then being able to take that image and scale it to a broader audience. Python, and specifically the Django framework on top of Python, was also very valuable to us. So this is what's called an MVC, a Model View Controller Framework. You'll hear of Ruby on Rails, you'll hear of Django, you might hear to a lesser degree of Tornado. On the PHP side, you'll hear of Kohana. These are all frameworks that are designed for web application development. They sit on top of a programming language, and they expedite the development process tremendously. So making use of a framework is highly recommended. It will save your production, your dev to production timeline. It'll be a huge savings in terms of just time spent building the system. It's also much more sustainable for maintenance as you operate, and kind of a linchpin to agile development methodologies and kind of the lean startup methodology as well. So that's in terms of the technical stack that it was built on. The first steps that we went through were again the card game. The following in terms of building out the system was actually just to draft a wireframe. Put together on a piece of paper, grab a couple of sheets of paper, and just start thinking through, as a user of your platform. And I apologize if this is kind of biased towards web applications or towards software development. It just happens to be the medium, for a good deal of new tech. But go through the wireframing exercise. Think about the overall user experience. Draw out the login page. Start with your login screen. Start with your sign-up form. Start building a list, of your friends and family, of people who are interested in your process and who are looking to support you throughout the build of your process. These are colleagues. These are friends. Sign up for a MailChimp account and get them in there and keep them updated on what you're doing, and encourage feedback. Set up continual feedback from your network. I apologize if this is a little preachy, if I'm just kind of dumping a bunch of info here, but it's it's great to talk through. The kind of process. I went back into my notes after Anthony asked about what was it like for us from the build, and it was kind of cool to see in the year what it started out as and what it's turned into. I'd be happy to demo the platform, but I think going through the exercise of just sharing this has been a lot of fun. Any questions at this point, or? No?
No. Yeah. You can't. Can you hear me, Alan?
Yes.
Oh. The question is, how did you personally get into this?
You can hear you.
How did I personally get into this?
Okay. That's the question. How did you personally get into this, Alan?
My background is actually in music composition. That's what I went to school for, and I ended up working as a developer for a good amount of time. And so the first few projects that I worked on were for a large company that was looking to build out kind of professional services software, web-based software. So I got a lot of hands-on experience, just kind of building out software for other people to solve their kind of business needs. I think what personally got me into Agreeable was an interest in the philosophy of social science. And so this is a book by a gentleman named Martin Paulus, and he did a very, very great job of laying out kind of the general framework and challenges that are associated with social science. It was something that when I started working for a social media firm, thought it would be wise to do. It turns out that social media is actually pretty far removed from social science, and I think what this book really kind of helped me with was to figure out where the intersections might exist, if they could. Introductions to John Stuart Mill and to his work on liberty. That was a huge motivator as well. But the truth is, it was a conversation I had with a friend that really kind of sparked the idea. My friend Matt, who he and I sat back to back, and we just had a fun conversation around polarity and around this notion of there being this kind of gray middle, that when I make a decision that I tend to be the person who says eventually yes or no, who makes that choice, but kind of spends a little time weighing out these factors in my head. I have, if it's a question of whether or not I walk to work today or take the bus, I'll weigh those factors in this kind of messy soup substance, and eventually one will outweigh the other, and those are in units of factors or considerations. One might be, I left my umbrella and it's raining, so yeah, I'll take the bus. And it was just this kind of messy back and forth conversation that didn't really have any substance, but that eventually started to whittle away or factor into the starting question for Agreeable.
Okay. I think we're about out of time, right? So that was great, Alan. Thanks for talking. We're gonna upload the video of this to our YouTube channel, so everybody can find it back and watch it later if they want to. And right, this was the inaugural demo, so we're gonna fix these technical kind of issues, I hope, as we get better at this. So thanks, Alan.
Very welcome. Thank you.
How do I now X out?